Bobby. How we doing after a few days, letting it marinate that the season has come to an end?
Oh, gentlemen, I'm doing pretty well. Reporting to you live from Cancun.
Wait a minute. Wait. Stop. You mean to tell me when I texted you earlier today, you were in Cancun and you were still like, yeah, I'll absolutely come on the show. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm oceanside right now in Cancun. Either that or I'm in Louisville, Texas. So you can pick which one is more believable.
I'm going to go with the Cancun one because that sounds great.
Right,
yeah, you deserve a Cancun vacation.
Yes, for sure.
Oh, thank you. So do y'all.
Oh, that's sweet, Bobby.
We all had to watch all 82 games this year. We all deserve it.
Tell me about it.
Well, let's just start there. We asked this question to Tim Cato when we talked to him last week. I'll ask it to you. If you could describe the Mavs season in one word, what would it be and why?
Cumbersome, I guess. Just really difficult. I don't know. Dispiriting is another word I would use. Just, it felt like every time they strung together 3 games in a row, or every time they would just like the defense would finally play well, then they would miss 10 free throws and lose by 1. Or the offense, they'd shoot 60% in a game, but they'd allow 135 points. Like it felt like every time it looked like it was going to be sunny outside, the clouds came back and it started raining. And it never really felt like the season truly took off. Like we just kind of sat around for 6 months waiting for it to get going, waiting for the team to find its identity, waiting for the team to find its stride. And it just never really happened. So the season is over, but it kind of felt like it was just kind of incomplete.
So, Bobby, this time of year is one for reflecting, any of these moments where you have kind of a transition time. It gives you an opportunity to reflect. And Iztok Franco wrote for D Magazine a really interesting piece, at least I thought, about the idea that the Mavericks seem to just be behind the curves on a lot of different things in the NBA. Would you happen to agree with that assessment of the Mavs, whether it's the front office, the coaching staff, being behind the curve of the larger NBA?
It's a really interesting question because it felt like, especially last season, right? Last season was sort of the peak of the Luka era. Felt like the Mavs had a ton of wings. They had a ton of versatility. They had the floor spaced perfectly, and they had a really, really good defense. And it felt like they figured it out. Like it felt like they built almost not quite as good a team as you can, but almost as good a team as you can around a ball-dominant, kind of heliocentric, all-NBA caliber player. And then this year, clearly, they took steps back in multiple areas. I don't know if I would go so far as to say they're like just behind constantly. It felt like the Mavs were way ahead of the curve offensively 3 or 4 years ago whenever they had the number 1 offensive rating of all time, at least at that point. But defensively and in terms of, positional size, switchability, versatility on the defensive end, it still feels like the Mavs are kind of behind there. You look around the top teams in the West and East. I mean, even Denver. I don't think that anyone is going to sit here and say, like, Denver's definitely the favorite to win the championship, but they have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown and Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon. They just have all these wings and all this length up and down the roster to complement their superstar, and the Mavs just don't really have that. And so if we're looking for ways to upgrade, that's definitely the area to target. Just more size, more length, more athleticism, more versatility, because ultimately I think those are the kind of players that are going to fit well next to Luka, but are also going to help mask the weaknesses that you would have whenever you have Luka and Kyrie, who are generational offensive players, but the defense is kind of another story.
Okay, we're going to go on a quick tangent real quick because I had to
I like tangents.
Read this real quick. It came up on my Twitter feed, and Bobby will appreciate this. So Nicholas Batum was talking to Brandon Scoop Robinson, apparently, and he said that he believes Victor Wembanyama is a mixture of Rudy Gobert, Giannis, Anthony Davis, and Kristaps Porzingis.
Oh my God! Okay.
Do we want to throw any more in there?
No, that was it.
Okay.
That was it. So how we got your reaction there, Bobby, to the fact that Victor apparently is Rudy, Giannis, Anthony Davis, and Kristaps Porzingis all wrapped in one.
It's a pretty funny combination. I described him earlier today as like if Rudy Gobert was able to put forth like a reasonable imitation of KD on offense, but was Rudy Gobert on defense. So like if Rudy Gobert had KD's like skill set, or at least the desire to play like KD and like some semblance of that same level of skill on offense, that's what Wembanyama would be, and which is pretty good. But I think Batum might have done better than me.
I like how he went with Rudy, Giannis, Anthony, and then Porzingis. No shade to Porzingis, but okay.
I do feel like, because I don't love comps just in general, I feel like we could have just kept naming a whole bunch of tall people. Who are the tall people in the league? Let's just read off the roster. But when we're talking about getting the types of players that you were mentioning earlier, right? The long, switchable, defensive capable players, all of that is something that has to be done with capital, right? Like in order to get something, you got to give something. Everybody understands how this world works. And within that, we have to then take stock of what the Mavs have. So, Bobby, from your perspective, if you're allowed to do this, what is the full complement of the Mavs kitty in order to make some moves or try and make this team better?
Well, it comes down to the mercy of the lottery gods. The Mavs have basically an 80% chance at having a top 10 pick in this draft. And if the ping pong balls bounce their way, they're going to have at least the number 10 pick. They have about a 14% chance of getting a top 4 pick. And so that becomes a really valuable pick, either to trade or to keep and use on a guy. One thing, going back to what Istok was saying, one thing Istok pointed out, the Pelicans, they got 2 guys, Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Jones, I believe, was a second-round pick, and Trey Murphy, they took like in the 20s. And so there are wings to be had in the draft if the Mavs want to use a pick this season, whether that's moving up, staying at 10, or even trading down and getting multiple first-round picks. There are plenty of wings in this draft that you can take a chance on that way. But if you want to trade them, here's the difficult thing. Reportedly, the Raptors were turning down offers of like 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby this year. Reportedly, the Nets wouldn't have even traded Mikal Bridges for 4 first-round picks this year. And so if you're trying to get one of these premier 3-and-D veteran-level players, especially ones that are on like pretty good contracts, the Mavs just simply don't have that amount of picks. They can only trade 2 first-round picks this summer because of picks they already owe to other teams for trades. And so they're pretty limited if you're trying to get these like borderline all-star caliber wings. They could add quality rotation pieces with the contracts and with the picks that they have, but they're probably not, unless some like extraordinary circumstance unfolds or something, they're probably not going to be able to trade for one of those like top of the line premier 3-and-D players. And so your best chance is either to just stockpile as many of those guys as you can, these veteran guys, or use your picks on them and hope that you can find, whether it's in the top 10 this year or buying into the second round, trying to find a diamond in the rough, or scouring the undrafted market, doing it the old-fashioned way through the draft, because they're probably not going to be able to swing one of those like jumbo superstar trades again anytime soon.
Assuming Kyrie Irving is back on this team, how does Bobby Karalla build around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, both offensively and defensively, and what does that player profile look like?
Okay, so I'm going to turn this back on you guys. I'm going to present you with 2 scenarios, and I want to hear your takes, okay? So offensively, it truly does not matter. Whoever you put out there, you're going to be able to put together, at worst, like the 12th best offense in the league, as long as you have those 2 guys. So I'm not even worried about offense. Defensively, though, if I am the emperor of the universe, I am just loading the roster with guys that are between 6'6" and 6'10". Just give me all the wings, all the length. I'll play small at center if I have to. I don't even care. I just need as many wings. I basically want to surround Luka and Kyrie with like the Toronto Raptors roster.
That's exactly
or the Nets roster. Like, just give me all the wings. The counterpoint, though, to that is if you're always going to play Luka and Kyrie like 35 to 40 minutes a piece per game, then does it make sense to try and build this very switchable, versatile defense? Or should you try and have this like old-fashioned defensive anchor kind of guy, like your Tyson Chandler or your Rudy Gobert type of player that you can funnel all the traffic into? That kind of limits what you can do offensively, and it sort of changes the way that Jason Kidd wants to play defense, but it is a pretty reliable way to help overcome some of your stars' deficiencies. So I'm kind of curious, which of those plans do you guys like more?
I tend to like the old-fashioned idea because if we're going to keep a high-level rim runner in the offensive lineup for Luka to be able to work off in pick-and-roll situations and someone who can clean up the mess, because if I can find comparable 3-and-D guys to go alongside Luka and Kyrie and then have an eraser on the back end, I think I'm okay with that because I feel like you lose a little bit of flexibility in terms of what you can do with your bench if you're going to have as much length as you have but not necessarily have a defensive anchor that you can feel confident in to erase those kinds of messes. But I guess on the other hand, you would have a bunch of perimeter guys that wouldn't even allow it to happen to get to the rim.
Well, I mean, the problem that Bobby is illustrating is that the perimeter guys that are going to allow that to happen are Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah.
It's funny that you went that way because I go the entire opposite way. Like, give me all of the length and all the switchability, right? Because the idea of Luka and Kyrie being guys that defenses can say, come here, let me see you defend, right? I would hate to then have another player, a big that with offenses and teams being so capable, or not even statistically, tactically, of being able to manipulate defenses, to then have another player, a big that is maybe not moves that much, maybe plays a lot of drop. Having another one of the players, our offenses go, come here, and then break the mold. I would like it so that you have these guys that are athletic. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot, KG, on this program is the notion of, defensive talent, which is like lateral quickness, size, and that all of that. And so, I think that that's where you need to focus on getting that defensive ability that then the effort will go and help and modulate. And then also when you have all that effort around, I think that helps Luka and Kyrie get into the effort of the entirety of the team defense. That's the way that at least I think of it.
So we'll get me Anthony Davis then.
There's so many pros. There's so many pros and cons to both. Now, I will say there are a few bigs in the NBA that can kind of do both things, like these sort of hybrid rim protectors and switchable defenders. I mean, a guy like Maxi Kleber is obviously not at the same level as a guy like Bam Adebayo, but Maxi is sort of that kind of guy. And so can the Mavs try and find one or two bigs that play in a similar way to Maxi, or maybe even at a higher level, that they can slide into that 5 spot? And then that way you have this sort of combination of he's switchable, but he can also do the traditional thing. I think that's maybe the ideal. But again, they just don't necessarily have the resources, at least as far as I know, or as far as I would think and project, to go get that guy unless they are able to draft him or get really lucky or something. So it's a really, really tricky situation.